And at this time, I like to just go ahead and introduce myself. And then from myself, I'll pass the baton on to Miss Anderson. And she'll talk about the work that she's doing with Phi Delta Kappa. And then we'll have Dr. Johnson go ahead and introduce herself and engage in the workshop with you all. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Tillis. I am a clinical instructor with River City Partnership. A part of my role on campus is to make sure that our scholars, all of our students, have all of the support and resources. Hold on, I'm gonna make sure that I'm recording. Okay, it's already recording. Cancel, sorry. Start recording. Cancel. Okay, so to make sure that all of our scholars, all of our students on campus have the support they need as they prepare for the field of education. My role in particular prepares students to not only teach, but also practice and promote equity and inclusion in their classroom, on campus, and in their communities. And I'm joined here today with our amazing graduate assistant, Miss Terica Claiborne. If you can say hi to everyone, Miss Claiborne.
Hi, everyone. I'm the graduate assistant for River City Partnership. I'm pretty sure I've messaged some of you all in the past if you are a part of River City Partnership. I'm just happy to be of service to you. So whatever you need, you can ask me directly, or you can message me individually or in a group, and I will try to assist you throughout this process.
And we're working together, Ms. Claiborne and I, with River City in partnership with the Office of Teacher Education and Clinical Practice. My partner, Ms. Ayana Perkins, is usually here with me, and we often co-facilitate. But today we've partnered with Phi Delta Kappa, and Ms. Anderson is going to tell you a little bit more about this organization and the work that they are doing with Dr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to say good morning to all of the participants and everybody on the meeting. My name is Joyce Anderson, and I represent the National Sorority of Phi Delta Kappa, which is a teachers organization, actually a teachers sorority throughout the U.S. and outside of the country. And what we do as teachers is we support teachers or education majors coming into the field of teaching, because we realize that teaching is a gift and everybody just doesn't have it, but it is something that you do from the heart. And every professional we know comes through a teacher, whether it's a president, it's a lawyer, it's a doctor, everybody comes through a teacher. So we understand what state standards are now, or national standards are for teachers to receive licensure. So actually what we do is we put on sessions each year to support teachers in receiving their passing the Praxis so they can receive their licensure. So we are very glad to partner with the University of Memphis. It's one of the best experiences that we've had. And for our participants, we thank you for being here this morning, for forging forward and reaching your goal to become an educator. So we just ask you to just take in the information and just know that you're going to just take this practice and you're going to do excellently in it. So thank you this morning for allowing us to share with you, and we hope that you pick up all of the information that you need. Thank you.
And I am Dr. Monifa Johnson. I will be facilitating today this second session of Teaching Reading Elementary for the Praxis 5205. So if we are ready, we will go ahead and begin. Are we good to go?
I also want to make a quick announcement. Ms. Claiborne is going to assist with monitoring the chat. But if she, so happens to miss your comment that you say in the chat, if you could just unmute yourself, both of us will be trying to monitor it closely, but if you can unmute yourself and find a way, in between Dr. Johnson's comments or her lesson, that would be great. Or you can just we can repost whatever comment you had in the chat. We'll be working to make sure that those questions get addressed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we will move forward by talking about our agenda for the first part of today's session. So part one will be focused on the selected response. We'll open by talking about your expectations. We'll go over the objectives, the norms for today's session, an overview of the test, and then the heart of our session, part one, is to actually answer some selected response questions. So we'll spend about 45 minutes doing that, and then we'll close part one with some study tips, some things to keep in mind, and some reflections or takeaways. And then we'll have a quick break and then move into part two of today's session. So let's begin with your expectations. You can come off mute. You can put something in the chat. What do you want to get out of today's session?
Hi, my name is Allison. I am a TALN major here at the University of Memphis. And with the teaching reading, I guess I'm just wanting to really dive deep into what this test is about.
Okay.
And how to be successful at it. And
okay.
So I'm just really excited to be here.
All right. So diving deep, some tips. I'm also seeing in the chat another tips to successfully pass the test, what to expect. Is there anything else? All right, tips again. Understanding the ins and outs and figuring out how to be successful. All right, so we've got some expectations, want to know about what they're wanting when it comes to constructed response. And then I also see a quick review before taking the test. So I believe that this opportunity that we have today will provide you with that. You'll be familiar with the content of the test. You'll have some idea through the discussion of some tips and strategies that you can take away, and you'll know what the test is about. So I think those expectations will be met in today's session. But as we're going through, if you have something that you feel is not being addressed, be sure to add it in the chat or be sure to ask a question. It's okay for you to come off mute and to share your voice. All right, so I've got an idea of your expectations. Let's move forward. These are the objectives for this session today: to practice with some sample test questions. So again, we'll spend about 45 minutes of our time here to also reflect on what worked or what didn't work when we're approaching the test questions. So this is where those opportunities for tips will come into play as well. So moving into norms, I'd like you to engage, but I also want you to share the airtime. So we'd love to hear all the voices that are represented on the call today. If you're wondering about something, I want you to ask. And as we're discussing these ideas and responding to selected response, constructed response, it's okay to disagree with the ideas that are being presented, but not the person who presented the ideas. So these are the norms that I'd like us to follow as we're moving along today. The test at a glance. So the teaching reading elementary test at a glance for 5205, you'll have about 150 minutes, 90 selected response questions, 3 constructed response questions. For the 90 selected response questions, you would want to spend about 1 minute per question. So about 120 of those 150 minutes you want to spend in the selected response area. Now, when it comes to the 3 constructed responses, you get 3 of them. You want to take about 10 minutes each. So you want to spend about 30 minutes of that 150 minutes on the constructed response. Categories that will be a part of the test: phonological and phonemic awareness. You can expect about 13 questions, and that's 11% of the test. Phonics and decoding, you can expect about 18 questions. That's 15% of the test. For vocabulary and fluency, you can expect about 21 questions. That's 18% of the test. Comprehension of literary and informational text, that's about 22 questions, 18% of the test. Writing, about 15 questions, 13% of the test. And then going back to those constructed response items on assessment and instructional decision making, you'll have 3 questions that will take you about 10 minutes each, and that is 25% of the test. Some more things that you want to know about the Praxis 5205. It does focus on the knowledge and skills to support reading and writing development in students. And then the items do provide a context to apply to topics or terms. So there may be some terms that you're not really familiar with, but we can use the context provided in the question to get some idea of how to best respond. All right, so far, do we have any questions or comments so far? You're welcome to come off mute. You're welcome to put something in the chat. All right, it looks like we're good to continue. So the very first thing I'd like us to do is to go ahead and start practicing. Our first set of practice items are related to phonological and phonemic awareness. This is about 11% of your test, and you'll have about 13 items that look like this. So what I'd like us to do at this time, and I'm going to try to minimize the images on my screen so I can see the full screen. I want to give you about 2 minutes to actually respond to these 2 questions. You can put your answers in the chat, or when the time is up, you're welcome to come off mute. But let's take 2 minutes to respond to these 2 questions. So I'll be looking down because I'm setting my timer. Let's start our 2 minutes now. Okay, I'm seeing some answers rolling in. We have about 1 more minute. Let's put some responses in the chat or be ready to come off mute. All right, so last few seconds, I see more answers rolling in. So far, it's looking like C and B for 23 and 12. I think that's pretty consistent so far, C and B. And Jessica, when we finish talking about this question, don't let me forget the question that you posted in the chat. So make sure to say something if it looks like we're moving on. All right, so time is up. Okay, I see that you have a response to that. Good deal. So time is up. Most of us chose C for 23 and most of us chose B for question number 12. Let's get started with number 23. Why do we think it was C? I'd love to hear from 2 different people. Why were we thinking C for number 23?
I'll go, but I didn't choose C. I chose D.
I see.
Showing students a word made of 3 different color tiles containing the phonemes and removing one color tile to create a new word. And so to me, the question was asking working on phoneme deletion, which is actually deleting a phoneme sound in a word. And so C is adding a different color tile. It's not deleting anything.
Yes.
But D, you're actually removing a phoneme. So like if the word was mat and you remove the M and you still have the word at, to me, that was what phoneme deletion was.
Yes, that was a good explanation. Thank you, Erin. Why do we think it was C? We had a lot of choices for C, or maybe a better question is, now that you heard what Erin had to say, how did your thinking shift? All right, don't be shy. You can put something in the chat, come off mute, but let's share something. A lot of us chose C. Erin had a good explanation for why a better choice would be D. What are we thinking now? All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move forward and show the slide of what the test makers had to say about why the best choice is D for number 23. So it says the correct answer is D. Looking at a series of 3 colored tiles and removing one of them forms a new word using the skill of deletion. And then let's look at choice C, where a lot of us missed that one. And I thank you for your feedback, Erica, to Erin saying that was a great breakdown. For choice C, it says choice C is incorrect because using different colored tiles with different sounds assigned to them to form words is a blending activity. So the better choice is going to be D. And thank you, Erica, again, for affirming what Erin had to say. Now let's go back and let's look at question number 12. So for this one, it looks like most of us chose B. So let's look at that and let's hear somebody share with us. Why did you choose B for number 12? And I might call on somebody. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to feel comfortable sharing. This is our opportunity to really understand and to be better prepared. So don't be too shy to share your ideas. So before I call on somebody, let me open it up one more time. Why are you thinking B? Thank you, Felicia.
I'll go again. So I chose B because in A, it says asking students to write a list of 1-syllable words that rhyme with the word him. Just off the top of my head, there wouldn't be too many words that would rhyme with the word him. And that is not really what would help that student best in understanding or having difficulty with phonemic awareness skills. C doesn't have anything to do with being able to help misconceptions in the phonemic awareness skills, and neither does D. And so to me, B was the best choice. It was kind of a difficult one for me, but to be able to like write down different words and then look at the similarities and differences between them, and like, so like some of them might have the same digraph sound, or some of them might have the same word family sound, like cake and rake and take and make, and they all have that ache sound, or cloud, and you have like the same 2 blending sounds, CL at the beginning, like cloud, clean, clear, click, like words like that. That'll allow them to be able to understand the different sounds that are making up those words and how they are similar, and how that'll help you be able to decode words when you're reading.
Okay, did anybody have a similar line of thinking as Erin for number 12 and thinking that it was B, or did you have a different reason for thinking B? Maritza, what did you think?
Which of the following instructional activity is a middle school language art teacher most likely to determine if a student with severe learning disability experience difficulty?
Okay. Are you sharing your response? All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this one. So the question ends with phonemic awareness skill. Of what you know of phonemic awareness, is that about the ability to translate letters or sounds into letters? Is it about that, or is it more about an oral awareness of sound? What are your thoughts?
Oral awareness. No, I was just saying, good morning, everyone. This is Lycia Williams. And I was just saying, I think it's more of the oral awareness rather than writing. And actually I chose C, but, you know, I'm just waiting to hear what everyone, you know, views are on this.
Okay, so very good. Thank you for sharing that. So phonemic awareness is more centered around the oral. And so when we're looking at these answer choices, one of the choices deals with sound, not necessarily things that are written. And that's choice D, asking the student to repeat and then segment the individual sounds in a spoken word. Now let's look at more about why for choice number 12, or for item number 12, D is going to be a better response. So it says D is the correct answer. Asking a student to segment the phonemes in an orally presented word is an example of a phonemic awareness skill. And I think a lot of us chose B for this one. Let me go back and see. So yes, B. Choice B is incorrect because having a student compare words in a word family, such as define, definitely, and definition, is an example of a word learning skill. So when we're thinking about phonemic awareness, we do want to pay more attention to answer choices. If we have an item centered around phonemic awareness, answer choices that are more related to sound or things that are being orally presented versus written. So if students are having to underline, like in choice C, and identify syllables, then they're looking at something that's written, so that takes them away from the oral and the sound. Does that make sense? You can put something in the chat, or you can come off mute and say something. All right, good deal. Thank you, Erin. All right, so moving on, remember, one of our norms is share the air. Thank you, Alexis, for your yes to that. So I want to hear some voices, some different voices. Now let's take our 2 minutes for this part. You have 2 questions, number 14, you have number 19. Let's take 2 minutes to answer these 2 questions. Put your responses in the chat or be ready to come off mute. Thank you, Hattie. All right, we've got about 1 minute left. I'm seeing an answer in the chat already. All right, about 10 seconds. If you have not, go ahead and put some responses in the chat. It looks like for 14, we're seeing C, D, and A. And it looks like for 19, I'm seeing D, A. Looks like D and A for the most part for number 19. So let's go ahead and get started. This made me smile. Okay. but I chose D for number 14, all right, and 19 for A. Let's get started. Let me hear a new voice. Number 14, what did you choose and why?
Okay, my name is Cameron Martin, Cameron Stewart. I chose, for 14, I chose D because A, it says that he uses evidence for the text. He did use evidence from the text in the story, that each syllable of the word contains a vowel sound. That's not necessarily true because he misspelled several words. So D, to me, Devin showed an understanding of the story structure. He was able to go to the story and pull text evidence from the story. However, he's missing skills. He's writing that it's called semi-phonemic. I think that's what it's like, that he's in that semi-phonemic stage of writing. And so the way he hears the word is how he's spelling the word.
Okay. So he's spelling it, how he's hearing it. And then for you, you're not seeing where he's showing that he knows that there are syllables in each word. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let me hear another response for that. Number 14.
I would have to, this is Hattie, but I would have to agree with what she said because in D, like she said, he's saying it and it makes me smile because this is how I wrote when I was probably his age. Because like I said words, or how people said words was how I wrote them. Mm-hmm. And so you never really got the syllable, and syllables were the hardest thing for me to learn. And so we're like consonants and everything else. And so I think D kind of just, he understands what he's talking about, but he's not making too much sense out of it.
Okay. And thank you for your voices and for sharing. So I want to bring something out about choice D. A lot of us did pick D, not everybody, but a lot of us. So when we're thinking about story structure, I don't know, well, let me just call out some things that are related to story structure and let's see if you change your response. So story structure would be things like the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, the denouement. So we're thinking mostly about the plot. So when you consider that, would we stick with D? You can put a response, a yes or no in the chat, or you can come off mute. Would you stick with D, knowing that that's what story structure is about? Okay, I'm seeing no. So the best answer for this choice, even though it may not seem like it because Devin is using invented spelling, it's actually A. He is using evidence from the text in his response. So for example, he says, the first way he's clever is that he can shoot bow and arrows. So he is using evidence from the text and he knows that words contain syllables and that vowels are included in that. So each syllable of a word contains a vowel sound. Let's just look at the word first. Now he spelled it F-E-R-S-T, but in listening to that or hearing that or even seeing it first, he's including vowel sounds in his invented spelling. So he does understand those things. Let's look at what the test makers had to say about 14. The correct answer is A. The writing sample shows the student draws on text for evidence of Coyote's cleverness, and an examination of the sample supports the claim that the student understands that each syllable in a word needs to contain at least one vowel. And then it says choice D is incorrect because the sample does not address story structure. It does provide details about Coyote. Okay, so if that was something that resonated with you, if that explanation you understood, please share in the chat whether or not you think that was a yes or a no, or come off mute. Did that make sense, that explanation, why A is the best choice? Okay, so I'm seeing a yes. All right, so another yes.
So Dr. Johnson, so now from my takeaway from that is basically take what you have and answer the question, because when I look back at it, even if I didn't know how to spell the word first, that's, you know, if I heard first as a second grader, I'm sorry, my 2-year-old's talking.
That's okay.
If I heard the word first as a second grader and I spelled it like that, I'm using the evidence from the text to give me what I need. Mm-hmm. And I do see that I am putting a vowel sound. I'm not eliminating any sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reflection. Okay, number 19. Now for this one, I wrote down, and I can scroll back through, but it looks like we chose either D or A. Let me hear one response, D or A. Why did you choose what you chose?
I chose A. Reviewing, revising, and editing earlier rough drafts of a document in a writing journal. Because I don't know, I think something I was reading when I was studying for like the 5003, and it was saying that using like Word documents was the best way to be able to have writers use a digital tool during writing, because you can go back and like do like the strike throughs or go back and make different comments, and different peers can go and give feedback on your assignment as well. And so that's the one that will be digitally able to just reform over the different times that you have created different parts of your writing. And so you can review and revise with the spelling and make changes and see those changes over a period of time. And recording and producing a video trailer has nothing to do with a writing skill. And neither does really creating a graphic organizer, even though that is a part of the process of writing, but it's not going to show much growth by seeing all of the different revisions and reviewing that you have made. And the blog doesn't have anything to do with writing either, even though a reflection is a writing, but I don't believe that's the type of writing that they are asking for this activity.
Okay, you were very clear in your explanation, and I appreciate that. Here's what I think you read into choice number A. I think that when you were reading this choice, you were assuming that this was a digital document, that the rough draft was a digital document. It says reviewing, revising, and editing earlier rough drafts of documents in a writing journal. So if we go back to the question, it says, which of the following activities best allows the students to use the digital product? So I think the first thing you really want to be looking for in all of these choices is you're looking for a digital product. And A does not make it clear that we're dealing with a digital product. B mentions a digital product, but as you shared, Erin, it's not going to be relevant to writing skills. So choice D is actually the best response for this, creating a blog. So a blog it is going to be evidence of students' writing skill, and they will be able to revisit it, but it's also a digital product. So let's look at that. So I see Lanice had a response to that, and I see Erin, oh, okay, the writing journal might not be digital. And Lanice, okay, since the rough draft is not digital, I will pick D. And D is the best answer. So let's look at why D is the best answer. Students can easily view previous blogs and see how their writing has changed over time. A is incorrect because even the revising and editing journal drafts will allow a student to see the improvements in their writing. The journal is not a digital product. And I'm seeing some more reflections. I'm seeing that makes perfect sense. I'm seeing yes, D. So very good. Let's move on to our next set of questions. All right, let's take 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay, we've got about 40 seconds left. Let's put our responses in the chat. I'll be ready to share. All right, so I'm seeing A and D for 22. And then for 16, I'm seeing, looks like mostly C and D. Let me look at that one more time. So A and D, and then C and D. All right, so let's go ahead. I also see an A for number 16. All right, so let's go ahead. Let me hear from somebody. Number 22, why did you choose what you chose? What were you thinking?
Okay, it's me, Cameron again.
Yes.
So for 22, it's a little tricky for me. I did pick A, but I was also torn between D. Because the student is showing the weakness in the low level accuracy, providing him with the grade level text will help him meet that standard, but also decoding and providing sight words will give him that early recognition. And then when I read D, I was thinking maybe we should lower the text, and provide the students with those vocabulary words and maybe those CBC words to help to bring them up to where they need to be. So now that I read that and said that out loud, D.
Okay, so you're thinking D. All right. Anybody agree? Anybody have a different response? I know we do because we chose between A and D. So what are you thinking for 22?
I agree with her for D. I chose D because if you are struggling with word reading accuracy and porosity, then there's no reason why you should be reading on grade level text, because you can't get those tier 1 or tier 2 and tier 3 words reading accurately. So you need to go down a level to pinpoint what exactly the words are that you're struggling on, so that you can accurately read every word like per minute, or and get the porosity correct, because A is just going to be harder for them. And it didn't necessarily say that they had what grade level it was, or if they were having trouble with sight words or decoding. It was just saying they were having trouble with word reading accuracy.
Okay, and I'm seeing a lot of people that said thank you for that were agreeing with what Cameron shared. I also see, I think anytime it has one-on-one instruction is a great help with deficits and get a better understanding on why or where a student is struggling. So I have a lot of agreement here. Let's look at it. Which of the following strategies should the teacher implement to best help the student? And we're talking again about a student who has weakness in word reading accuracy. So they're having trouble reading the words accurately. That's a signal for decoding. To read the words accurately is a signal and something that should make you think about decoding, because when you're decoding words, you're figuring out how to pronounce the words. So that's one clue to why A is going to be a better choice. And then this student also has a weakness with prosody, or being able to read with expression. Now, choice A says using level text. So a level text doesn't necessarily mean that it's on grade level. It just means that it's just right for that personal student. So, or that individual student. So they're using a level text, a just right text, to instruct the student on how to decode the words, which means that if they're instructing them on how to do that, they'll have a better chance of reading the words accurately and also instructing the students on sight words. So they know how to decode, they can identify some words on sight, which means that they'll do better with the prosody or the fluency of the reading, and they'll read more accurately. So A is a better choice, and we'll look at what the test makers had to say. If we provide the student choice D with direct instruction in vocabulary words, and we're automatically just using lower level text, it may not be the right text for the student. So choice A mentions leveled text, not necessarily lower level text. So if that's not resonating with you or making sense, make sure you add a comment or say something. But we're going to go and look at the response for 22. So 22, the answer is A. Leveled text can be used to increase automaticity with sight words, decodable words, and connected text. And none of the choices except A will best help the student improve word reading accuracy. That's that decoding and fluency. All right, so what are your thoughts after hearing that and reading that? What are your thoughts? Does that resonate with you? Does it make sense? Is it unclear? Share something.
I understand more now, just for the simple fact that I was really torn between A and D, and the level text is what kind of confused me, and within the direct instruction of lower level text. So that's why I agreed with like D being the most, to me, the most accurate answer. But I was, it totally makes sense that the leveled text, and it's not giving you an exact level of where they may be at or where they need to be at. It's just saying that level text is the most appropriate instruction for the student on decoding and sight word recognition.
All right. Thank you, Allison, for that. And I see some others that are agreeing that that explanation made sense. And I also see the definition of level was helpful. All right, so for 16, it looks like we were torn between three answers. I had some C's, I had some D's, and I had some A's. So let's hear one person's thought process for number 16.
I'll go for 16.
Okay.
I picked C because with the students who can't recognize uppercase and lowercase letters, I didn't think reading environmental print in the classroom with the system. I didn't think along with the system. And working on the work, using worksheets can help them, but I think if they practice every day, that will help them to see the repetition of each letter. I think each day.
That was a great explanation, Erica. Let's look at what the test makers had to say, and there is agreement there. So the correct answer is C. Practicing the identification of letter names and sounds daily helps students to identify the letters independently. And once students are able to identify letters, they can attempt to reproduce them. Cameron said, good job, Erica. That's in the chat. All right. And so it wouldn't be A because students who can't identify letters are not helped by looking at environmental print without some type of targeted instruction. And it would not be D because simply completing worksheets does not provide explicit teacher instruction on letter names and sounds. So thank you, Erica. Anita is also saying you did a great job with that explanation. All right, guys, vocabulary and fluency, 2 questions. You see about 21 items that look like this on your test. Let's take 2 minutes to answer these 2 questions. Okay, about 40 seconds. Okay, so I'm seeing B, C, A, here, A. Okay, so it looks like for number 11, I'm seeing A and B for the most part, it looks like. And then for number 5, it looks like C, D, and B. All right, so let's start with number 11. Let's hear from somebody. What were you thinking? What did you choose and why?
Good morning. I chose number 11 because when the teacher asks the students to look up the word, write down the word house, bill, and state, they can also go back to the to the dictionary and look these words up, and whenever they want to use the word again, they can go back and look up go back and use these words in a text or in a sentence or whatever they write, and they can see they can know what the meaning is of these words.
All right, did you choose B? What did you choose, Anita?
I chose B.
Okay. So you chose B for number 11?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Because so the student can understand what these words and the definition is before they go back and write it down again, so they'll know.
Okay, I'm understanding your thinking. Let's go back to the question. Which of the following strategies, I'm hearing another voice. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Johnson. I was just going to point out that I apologize.
You're fine.
It's asking them to write down the definition, what they already know. So it's asking them to use that background knowledge to what the definition is. And then it says, which of the following strategies will best help them while they're reading. So I think A is the most just logical answer, just because it's asking you to underline the vocabulary words and read around the words to find out the alternate definitions that may influence that background knowledge to come to the surface.
Yes, and that's what I was getting at by getting ready to read that question. So thank you for that, Allison.
I apologize.
And Maritza, no, don't apologize. And Maritza also said, because the student uses word and text to help define other words while reading. So she's also agreeing with that A, and I have one from Lanice as well. A, because it can be done while reading. And that's when we go back to the question, that's what we really want to pay attention to. Which of the following strategies will best help the students determine the meaning of the vocabulary words while reading? And William put in the chat, using context clues. So A is going to be our best choice for number 11. And let's look at what the test makers had to say about that. The correct answer is A, by first brainstorming the familiar definitions of the words and then using the context of the piece of academic writing to learn another definition for each word. Students are assimilating the idea that many words in English have more than one meaning. And if they're reading and a word doesn't quite make sense, they need to seek out alternate definitions, and using context clues is an excellent strategy for this purpose. Now for B, it says that B is incorrect because while looking up the words might be helpful, it's not the most efficient method while they're reading. Okay, let's go back and let's look at, not sure how I did that. So let's go back. And I want us to look at number 5. Let's hear a response for number 5. Why did you choose what you chose? We had lots of answers here, pretty much every option. So some of us chose A, some B, some C, and some D. But let's hear from one person. Why did you choose what you chose?
Okay, I'll go again if that's okay.
Yes.
I was a little, I guess you could say, thrown off. So I'm between C and D just because he started with a small group of struggling readers. I don't think a whole class choral reading and being together would benefit them just because they've already been, brought out to be in a small group to be, worked with more. So I would say either just taking the turns and highlighting the unknown vocabulary. And then if they're following along with their classmates who are currently reading, they can still highlight unknown vocabulary and bring that up to the instructor if they don't understand something. But then again, also learning word affixes to decipher, using maybe background knowledge to be able to decipher unknown vocabulary in the context. So I'm torn between C and D.
Okay, so torn between C and D. All right, let's look at the difference between C and D. And that question stem, which of the following vocabulary acquisition activities is best to help the student build fluency and comprehension while reading? So let's look at number 5. Okay, the correct answer is D. Learning the meanings of various prefixes, suffixes, and root words can help students to decode and pronounce unknown words with better accuracy. It is a high yield strategy to help both fluency and comprehension. So why wouldn't it be C? Let's see. C is incorrect because reading from a passage and highlighting unknown vocabulary does not actually do anything to improve understanding of the unknown words. So there's no element of discussion, use of context clues, or defining the words in that activity. And our question is asking us how we can help students build fluency and comprehension. Now, some of us also chose A and B. Choral reading is not a vocabulary acquisition activity. So that's one of the reasons why A is not going to be a good answer. B, think, pair, share is not really associated with vocabulary acquisition. It is associated with comprehension. So looking at what the test makers had to say, hearing what Allison had to say and your own thought process, does this explanation of why the best choice is D make sense? You can put something in the chat or you can come off mute. Does this make sense?
Yes, ma'am. I agree with D.
Okay. So at this time,
yes, ma'am, I agree with
this time, all right. Thank you, Anita.
Yes, I agree.
So what I'd like us to do at this time, because we're getting close to the 10 o'clock mark where we wanted to cut off, we do still have 2 more questions to answer, but I'd like us at this time to take a 10-minute break. And when we come back, we'll answer our last 2 questions, and then we'll shift into constructed response. So let's take 10 minutes. I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm going to go on mute, and I will return in 10 minutes. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay with me.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. It's okay with me.
Okay. See you in 10 minutes. Okay, we'll get started in about 1 minute. We'll start in about 1 minute. What was that? The heat? Yeah. Turn on the heat. All right. Lock the door. Lock the garage. Garage light is on. You want the car? It goes off by itself. Okay, so let us go ahead and get started. This is our last section of selected response items. So it is focused on comprehension of literary and informational text. So you'd see about 22 items that look like this. This is about 18% of the test. This is our last two selected response items, and then we're going to move on to constructed response. So please take 2 minutes to read the questions and answer in the chat and be ready to share when time is up. So 2 minutes starting now. Okay, we have about 1 minute. Let's put those answers in the chat and be ready to share when time is up. Okay, I see a B and D. Okay, so it looks like several B's and D's. B for 23 and D for 15. Okay, so far we're in agreement, B and D. If you didn't get a chance to respond, go ahead and put something in the chat. All right, so I've got a B and a C. All right, and then I have C and all of the above. So let's hear from someone. Somebody share. Why did you pick what you picked for number 23?
All right, I'll share again.
Okay.
I chose B just for the simple fact that she's designing a mini unit focusing on recognizing common text structures to help them monitor and strengthen their comprehension. B just seemed the most accurately correct, because the teacher is wanting to use this activity by introducing signal words and phrases that help identify patterns, which to me is a common text structure.
Okay.
And then building their comprehension would come with using a graphic organizer to develop to find out each pattern for the text structure.
And that was a great explanation. Anybody in agreement? You have a different response? What are you thinking for number 23? Thank you, Allison.
Yes, ma'am.
So I didn't have a chance to drop it in the chat, but I'm reading that and looking at A. I was looking at A because it says they're strengthening their reading comprehension. So I was thinking, okay, they need to, well, now that I read the whole answer to A, no, I don't think A.
Okay. Okay. All right, and I'm seeing, but it's introducing a way to monitor. That's one of the things that I'm seeing in the chat from Jessica. All right, let us look at what our best response would be for number 23, where the mini unit is designed to teach students to recognize common text structures. And before I get to what the test makers had to say, give me some examples of text structures. What would be some examples? You can put them in the chat. You can come off mute.
So like compare and contrast.
Compare and contrast.
Solution.
Description.
Yes, description, problem solution. I see Maritza has compare and contrast as well. Okay, and so chronology, yes. All right, let's look at 23. The answer is B. Using signal words and phrases is a common method to help students recognize text structure to assist in comprehension. Now, some of us thought that the response could have been C, so let's look at C. C says that we're engaging students in a picture walk while asking them to make predictions, activate prior knowledge, and set a purpose for reading. C is incorrect because this pertains to a pre-reading strategy called picture walk that allows students to preview and activate prior knowledge. And it's also may not be appropriate for fifth graders. So our best response is going to be B. You heard some of those text structures that were named, and we know that the teacher is designing a mini unit to help students recognize those text structures. So does this explanation make sense? For those of us that didn't have B, does this explanation make sense? You can throw something in the chat. Okay, so I'm seeing a yes from Cameron. All right, let's go to number 15. So for 15, we had a couple of responses. Some chose D, some chose C. Some thought that everything seemed to make sense. So share, let's get a new voice. Let's get a new voice. What were you thinking? All right, don't be shy. This is our learning opportunity. Don't be shy.
This is Cameron. I'm not a new voice, but I would have picked administrating an informal assessment to identify the skills in which the student is struggling.
Okay, you went on mute, Cameron.
I'm sorry. I would have picked D, and going back to the question, she says, did she notice that the student is unable to answer basic comprehension questions? So that aligned with getting a passage, asking the students those basic questions. I'm assuming the who, what, when, where, how, and having a student to kind of maybe talk through that would help identify like what he's not connecting, where the missing connection is.
Okay, and then I have Maritza's response, D, because an informal assessment is a way for the teacher to help assist the student in struggling areas, and Alexis agreed. And so all of those responses you'll see those show up in the test maker's response for why D is the best answer choice for number C. So let us go there. For number 15, the correct answer is D, administering an informal assessment to identify the skills with which the student is struggling is the best first step to help the teacher provide guided instruction in the area the student needs most. All of the other choices are strategies to use after performing an informal assessment to find the skill level of the student. And I have Allison's, I definitely agree to D. All right, so that will take us through our selected response questions. Here are a few study tips. You want to engage in spaced practice. So spread out your practice. Don't try to cram everything in right before you take an assessment. Self-quiz. You can make up your own test questions. You can use flashcards. You want to try to utilize active recall. Write down everything you know about a topic that you're going to be tested on, and then review it. See where the gaps are. See where you're doing really well, and you can move on to thinking about something else. Mix it up with your studying. So don't just focus on one topic. Mix it up. Focus on several things. Make your studying concrete. So if there are pictures you can use, if there are examples that you can use that will help you understand the topics or the concepts, then use them. But overall, definitely figure out what works for you. Some other things to keep in mind: there is no penalty for an incorrect answer. So guess, guess, guess. And also, you can answer the questions in any order. So if you know that you're struggling with question number 17, don't spend a lot of time there. Go on to another question. You can come back, and finally, you can guess what that answer might be. Now, I would like, before we transition, please share with me your reflections or your takeaways after going through the selected response. You can put something in the chat, but I'd love to hear at least one or two voices. What are your takeaways after going through some questions?
I really enjoyed the breakdown of each question and being able to see the test makers take away from it. Okay. And then you being able to discuss it with us, as well as why we believe that the answer was correct. It just helped me to be able to hear, my cohort's answers as well when they spoke up or put it in the chat, just to be able to hear their explanations. Yeah. Not that it, turned me in a different manner, but it just hearing all the different explanations at the same time just really honed in on and like what we believe the right answer to be. So.
All right. Okay. Alexis, I see I need everyone's help. You want to say something more about that?
Hi, I'm not Alexis. My name is Latasha Pittman. I just have my daughter name up there. But I love that you help us a lot. And it's been great. I've been understanding more. And I'm ready for this test. I think I'm going to keep studying. Just like you said, see what I like, what's best for me.
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you so much for that. And let us go ahead and shift.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Thank you. Okay, now we have had our break, but we are not breaking. I just wanted to. Hi.
Have a part two. Okay.
Okay, I thought I was getting ready to hear another voice. I do see in the chat, I agree. It helped me to see how my thinking on a question can be totally wrong compared to the test taker's reasoning, but I loved how they broke it down. So yes, that is helpful to see how the test makers constructed the test, how they're thinking about it, because then it helps us to be able to shift our own thinking. So I love that response. Okay, part two, we're going to have an opening by talking about an overview for the constructed response, some things to keep in mind, a general scoring guide. We'll spend some time looking at actual answers, and if we have time, we will practice, but we will definitely close with some reflection and some takeaways. And Cameron had another response: pay attention to what the question is asking versus implementing my own thinking. I see Maritza's response. For this exam, we really have to read each question or scenario and decide what strategy or method will better assist the teacher in teaching reading. And I really enjoyed hearing the breakdown of each question. Have to look for those keywords. Thank you for all those responses. Okay, moving into constructed response. The teaching reading constructed response section will have 3 items for you to look at. And remember, we talked about the fact that you spend about 10 minutes on each of these constructed response items. Questions do require you to demonstrate the ability to apply knowledge and theory of reading to specific students' needs and classroom scenarios. And each task is scored on a 0 to 3 scale. Some things to keep in mind for the constructed response: answer the question accurately, answer it completely, answer the question that is asked, give a thorough and detailed response, and then reread your response to make sure you've done everything that was asked. It's accurate, it's complete, it answers the question, it's thorough and detailed. Now, let's look at what makes a 3 different from a 2 or a 1 or a 0, 3 being the highest score that you can get on the constructed response. So when we're thinking about and looking at a response, and we're thinking about the elements of reading and reading instruction that are relevant to the question being asked, a 3 would show that they have thorough understanding. A 2 would show basic or general understanding. A 1 would show weak or limited understanding, and a 0 would show no understanding. Looking at the responses for constructed response, thinking about how the person answered the question, someone who earns a 3 would show that they clearly and specifically answered all parts. Someone who scores a 2 would adequately answer most or all parts. Someone who scores a 1 would answer some parts at a basic level, and someone who scores a 0 would fail to respond appropriately to any part. Now, what we're writing in the constructed response should show that we have knowledge that's relevant. We have knowledge of concepts, theories, facts, procedures, and methodologies. A 3 would show strong knowledge. They may have some minor errors, but they show strong knowledge. A 2 would show basic or general knowledge. They may have some errors, but the errors do not detract from what they're saying. A 1 would show weak or limited knowledge, and they may have some misconceptions. A 0 would show no knowledge, or that their knowledge is seriously in error. And then last, when we're considering a constructed response and the explanations that are there, a 3's explanations would be strong and well supported. A 2's explanations would be basic and adequately supported. A 1's explanations would not really be there. They'd be weak, or there'd be no explanation, and the support would be inadequate. Okay, I see in the chat that William is asking, would we be able to access this recorded session after today? It is my understanding that you would have access to it. I believe that it will be posted to the university's page of resources.
Yes, that is true. That is correct.
Okay. So at this time, the constructed response question that we're utilizing is one that was a part of the study materials or the study guide for this Praxis. Now, I'm going to ask somebody to actually read the constructed response question. It came with 2 tasks, but we're really only going to look at one part, one task. So last week, we looked at task 1. This week, we're looking at task 2. May I have somebody volunteer to read the constructed response? Thank you, Allison.
I don't mind. Mr. Jimenez, a 6th grade science teacher, teaches a diverse group of 24 students. 8 of Mr. Jimenez's students read at a 4th grade level and often need instructional support in reading informational materials. 6 students are proficient and fluently reading and comprehending the science text and curriculum-based printed materials. The remaining 10 students, excuse me, are reading more than 2 years below grade level and have significant difficulty in reading the science textbook with fluency. These students struggle in particular with decoding, understanding the meaning of unfamiliar content-specific words, and recalling what they have read. Task 2, identify and describe the purpose of 2 differentiated instructional strategies that Mr. Jimenez can use to improve students' learning of print-based materials related to science.
All right, and thank you for that. So let's look at a sample response. I want to give you about 1 minute to read the response to yourself, but I want you to be thinking about whether this response is strong, whether you think it would be a 3, do you think it's basic, a 2, or do you think it's a weak response, a 1? And now we were asked to identify and describe the purpose of 2 differentiated instructional strategies. So as you're reading, you want to see if you can identify 2 strategies, and then are they identified and are they described? So those 2 things you're looking for. Take a minute and then put your response in the chat. Is this a 3, strong, a 2, basic, or a 1, weak? Okay, so I'm seeing a 2 so far. Okay, I'm seeing a 1, a weak. Okay, another 2. So it looks like 2 2s and 2 1s so far. Okay, I don't think the strategies are thoroughly explained. They're just stated. Okay, so keep in mind that you're only looking at part of a response. The constructed response had 2 tasks, and we're only looking at task 2, but let's look at what the test makers had to say about this one, this response. So the score was actually a score of 2. And what they said was, in task 2, the test taker gives 2 differentiated instruction strategies, and we were asked for that. So the first one was forming groups based on individual student interest. The second one was using curriculum compacting as a way to provide instruction. So this person did the first thing. They did have 2 strategies. The next thing they needed to do was to talk about the purpose of those strategies or describe the strategies. The test taker does not provide a clear description or the purpose of the concept of curriculum compacting. This response demonstrates a general understanding of the elements of reading and reading instruction relevant to the question. So this was a partial response. They did give 2 techniques. So in this first paragraph, one strategy could be to form small groups. In that second paragraph, use the concept of curriculum compacting. We do see a description of the small groups in the first paragraph, no description of the curriculum compacting in the second paragraph. And that's why this person earned a score of a 2. It was a partial response, but it did demonstrate some understanding. Yes, so Erica said 2 needed more details, and it did. All right, let's go on and let's have a volunteer for this next response. Take a minute and think about whether it's strong 3, basic 2, or weak 1. Okay, so maybe a 1. All right, several 1s, so lots of agreement here. Okay, so we're in agreement. So far, everything is looking like a 1 at this point. So let's go ahead and see what the test maker said about this response. Score of 1. Task 2 is partially addressed. The test taker identifies the need for the teacher to develop different lesson plans based on specific student needs. For example, word recognition and comprehension, This response demonstrates a weak or limited understanding of the elements of reading and reading instruction relevant to the question. Now, if you have something that's coming to mind as you're looking at these sample responses, be sure to put it in the chat or unmute and share your thinking. I will ask for reflection at the end, but if you have something that just comes to you, be sure to share it. Now, our third response, I'll give you about a minute and a half on this one, but do read it and consider whether you think it's strong 3, basic 2, or weak 1. And the task is to identify and describe the purpose of 2 differentiated instructional strategies. Yeah, strong 3, absolutely. That's a 3 for sure. All right, so we didn't need a minute and a half. We got a 3, 3, 3. Okay, so at this time, what I'd like to do before we move into what the test makers had to say about this response, I'd love to hear from 1 or 2 people. How do you know that this is a 3 for sure?
The way that the student described two different ways of differentiated instruction, but not only that, it gave an exact example of one, and then described that technique and how that technique could be used in the instruction for Mr. Jimenez to be able to instruct his students. And the test taker did that in 2 ways, and it's a really detailed and very strong explanation.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do have in the chat, writing different lesson plans to meet the needs would not be relevant. I don't know if is this from this one? Or maybe from a different response. And then I'm also seeing in the chat, it states multiple differentiations and they go into details and examples. So yes. All right, so let's see what the test makers had to say. And you were absolutely correct. This is a strong 3. In task 2, the test taker identifies and clearly describes 2 strategies and the purposes of each that Mr. Jimenez can use to differentiate instruction. And then they name the 2 things: using the Freyer model to provide explicit instruction in content-based vocabulary, and using an anticipation guide as a way to support students with comprehension difficulties when engaged in reading curriculum-based materials in science. This response demonstrates a thorough understanding of the elements of reading and reading instruction. Okay, so what are your takeaways? Looking at the sample responses, looking at how they were scored, a 3, 2, or 1. What are your takeaways in just analyzing what other people had to say? You can put something in the chat or come off mute. If it's in the chat, I'll read it. Uh-oh. All right, so give what they're asking and provide as many details as possible to support your answer. Thank you, Cameron. We should be thorough in what we write and provide details. Thank you, Lanice. And you're welcome to unmute as well. Now, in going back to the expectations at the beginning of the session, I asked for, what are your expectations? What are you hoping to get out of this? And one person was really interested in the constructed response. So I'm hoping that by seeing how things are scored, by looking at sample responses and being able to tell what makes a 3 a 3, what makes a 2 a 2, what makes a 1 a 1, I'm hoping that you're able to take something away that's going to be helpful for you. Charlene said, details, details, details. And Jessica also said, I think just being more detailed is the best way to get a 3 on constructed responses. So let's go back to that rubric and let's again review what it takes to get a 3.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
is it better to write in paragraph form or like bulletproof and like building off bullets?
I have actually heard both. And I think as long as you're addressing the question in its entirety, and as long as your response is showing that you know what you're talking about and you're actually using elements of reading and reading instruction in your response that are relevant, I don't think it matters. I know that they give us examples in paragraph form. I've not seen any study comparing examples that were in bullet form, but I think if you are thoroughly answering the question, whether that's in bullet form or paragraph form, that you'd be good. So what does it take? Okay, so what does it take to get a 3? Again, showing thorough understanding, clearly and specifically answering all parts, showing strong knowledge, and making sure that your explanation, that, you know, when we had comments that we need to be detailed, make sure that the explanation is strong and well supported. Okay, Jessica has a comment. That's a great question because that response looked lengthy and I want to make sure I have enough time. Yes, ma'am. So remember, you'll be taking about 10 minutes per constructed response item. Okay, so I think we have enough time to practice. And so I want to give you the same. Task. Uh-oh, I went too far. And I want you to take about 5 minutes to think about how you would have responded to this. So what differentiated instructional strategies would you identify? How would you describe them and their purpose? I want you to take about 5 minutes to do that. I don't expect you to write a paragraph in the chat. Think about it, jot it down on some paper, make an electronic note of it. Just be ready to share in about 5 minutes how you think you would respond to this. Okay, so 5 minutes. Okay, about 1 minute. Thirty seconds. Okay, so let's start sharing. Now we can do this in several ways. You are welcome to unmute. If you actually wrote out your response and you want to share it with the group and get some feedback, we can do that. If you just want to put little pieces of what you think you may have said in the chat, like just naming two different differentiated strategies, you can jot those in the chat. If you want to just talk about explaining a little piece, you can do that. So it looks like Anita already has something in the chat. He will use the different lesson plans to differentiate the instructional strategies so the students can learn the materials and also improve their learning strategies. So that sounds like the use of lesson plans will be one of the differentiated instructional strategies. What are some other strategies that you might have chosen if you were responding to this task?
I'll go.
Yes.
I would definitely use learning stations just because he's already kind of broken up his students into, he's got the 6 students that are proficient in fluently reading and comprehension. He's got 10 students that are on another level, and he's got 8 students on a 4th grade level. So definitely learning stations, but in that learning station, making sure that you're using scaffolding and not just teaching at the level that they are, or, you know, trying to lessen the level that they're learning, because we're wanting to teach them more. We're wanting to teach up. And then you'd be using, my other one would be task cards. So in one of my classes, we learned of a reading strategy called, it's playing, and I'm a big fan of Jeopardy, but it's utilizing the game Jeopardy and just putting in vocabulary questions, but giving them a phrase that would inhibit that background knowledge, or provoke that, not inhibit, provoke that background knowledge to help them decipher and decode what the text is asking them to figure out which word it is.
Okay, so it sounds like you not only gave us 2 different strategies, but then you also described and explained those strategies. So I think that would be a strong response. Group, what do you think? You can put something in the chat. You can come off mute. What do you think? All right, we got a 3. Now, Maritza has a response, and Anita's saying 3 as well. Maritza has a response. One strategy that comes to mind is making heterogeneous groups, mixing the students because they can learn from each other along with the assistance of the teacher. And we do this a lot in my classroom. So that's one way to support students in their individual needs by grouping them a certain way. Okay. What else do we have? I saw something else in the chat. Jessica, having students use recalling or activating prior knowledge to scaffold learning on what they already know and then build the curriculum-based materials. So Jessica, it sounds like you're definitely differentiating if you're using students' prior knowledge to build the curriculum materials. So overall, again, guys, and William said that he agrees, and Alexis also agrees that response, Allison, was a 3. So task 2, identify and describe the purpose of 2 differentiated instructional strategies. As long as we are identifying them and describing them, and our response shows that we actually do have knowledge of what it takes to support students in their reading. 3, answer the question. Let me go back to those. I see some more responses here. Let's see what we have. Oh, thanks everyone. Those are great ideas. I have Cameron's response. I often use chunking the text a lot and provide graphic organizers to fill in important details. Would this be sufficient? Do you think that would be a sufficient response group for talking about differentiated instructional strategies? Do you see differentiation in Cameron's response? Chunking the text, providing graphic organizers. You can always come off mute. You can always put something in the chat. One thing that comes to mind for me, Cameron, when I'm looking at the task and it tells me that, okay, Allison said great response. When I'm looking at the task and I know that I need to show that I'm differentiating or doing something different for different students, one way that you might even add on to your response or tweak your response is to provide different graphic organizers based on students' learning needs or learning styles, and that brings in that differentiation. So nothing wrong with having kids chunk the text, nothing wrong with them using graphic organizers, but you do want to make sure that you're talking about differentiation. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, good deal. So let us do a quick review, not of the rubric, but of those things that we want to keep in mind when doing a constructed response. Answer the question completely. I skipped one. Answer the question accurately. Answer the question that is asked. Give a thorough and detailed response, and then reread your response to make sure that you've done everything that you needed to do. And we are getting ready to close, ladies and gentlemen. You know that I want to know what you're thinking. So what are your reflections and takeaways? What will you take with you into the praxis, whether it's for the constructed response or just overall for the assessment? What are you thinking?
I actually wrote down where you said answer accurately, completely, provide what they're asking you and give the details. So I wrote that down, and my grandmother used to say, put it underneath my pillow. So
okay.
I can remember it when I go. And I think that's a lot of where I get stuck not getting the 3 is because I'm leaving out something that they're asking.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Cameron. I see knowing what to look for and how to answer the questions. Okay, we have a screenshot of that slide as well. Some things to keep in mind. Okay.
I did take a screenshot of a lot of it as well. I think going over the questions and then really the constructive responses was where I was getting nervous. And being able to see the breakdown of it and then see the different responses, what a 3, a 2, and a 1 looks like, I think really helped put it into perspective for myself.
Very good. So guys, in addition to all the tips, in addition to what you heard your peers say, all those things, put those together, but also take with you some confidence. You have been studying, you have been preparing, you have been readying yourself take some confidence into the room with you as well. I really enjoy getting an opportunity to work with you, and I wish you the absolute best. And thank you, and have a great rest of your day. All right, I see some more responses.
Good luck, everyone.
Good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Good luck, everyone.
Great. You're welcome. Very, very welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson.
So welcome. Really enjoyed you guys. Enjoyed your participation and your feedback.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Question there, please.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A big thumbs up to you, Dr. Johnson. Awesome session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of it.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to know where I could find study materials other than, where the recording is.
Will you speak to that, please?
I can speak to that. The University of Memphis and the College of Education created a LibGuide. You can type in your Google search engine, University of Memphis Praxis Prep LibGuide, and it should take you directly to books, ebooks, video libraries, and a ton of resources that we've collected for you in your preparation for your exam.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. You can, if you can't find that, you can also go to our TEP website, and then we'll have that information, how to access the LibGuide, as well as additional resources.
All righty.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I enjoyed this. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. All right. Well, I am going to stop sharing, I guess, at this time. Is that what I need to be doing?
I'm going to stay on for a little while in case you have any questions.
I have one. Will there be a tutorial for Praxis 5354 or 5543?
Which one is that one?
SED pre-K through third.
Yes, I believe so. And that's going to be towards either the middle of March or the end of March. We have Miss Lashiba Hilliard, who will be facilitating that workshop. Dr. Hilliard, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Keep your, make sure you're checking your emails. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Where can I find the other materials for this this test?
If you go to our Office of Teaching and Clinical Placement website, we have a list of Praxis Prep resources on that page, and then we have a link to the LibGuide, which Ms. Perkins and I worked really hard to generate a ton of ebooks, books that you can use, like workbooks inside the library that you could use, as well as videos, test taking strategies. And that is, if you type in your Google search, LibGuide, University of Memphis, Praxis, then you can get that information directly from there. But you can also go to our website, the Office of Teacher Education and Clinical Practice.
Okay. And also, can I also use that Praxis website to get this information off also?
Yeah, let me see if I'm gonna go ahead and try to find it on right now for you, and I'll put it in our chat.
Okay, because I really want to take this test so I can pass it.
I know you do. I want you to pass it too. So let me see.
And also, can I also get a study guide and buy a study guide for this test?
Yeah, the ETS has a study guide that's free, and it has, sometimes it has links to videos and a number of things included on that. It just depends on what exam it is. I'm going to put a link in our chat right now to our website. And then on here, you can just kind of peruse, just look around. Praxis test info, Praxis core resources, Praxis exams. There's just a lot of different resources that you can use. And then I would also schedule, go ahead.
Okay. Also, can I get the like the PowerPoint that she was doing today? I want to, read over it, and so I can make sure I get the thorough understanding.
Dr. Johnson, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that. Of course, it will also be shown in the video, right? Yes. That will be on the website. But yes, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll have the video, the actual video on our website. Okay. And I'll ask Miss Perkins if she can send it to all the attendees.
Okay, then I really appreciate that.
You're good. You're good. We're happy to help. Thank you, Phi Delta Kappa, Dr. Johnson. We're so grateful for your support.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity.
I see. Yes, it was.
I just want to thank the University of Memphis for partnering with us, and thank you to our presenter. I just think it was an excellent display of knowledge and professionalism and excellence. And I know that many of the participants today got a lot of information out of it, and that information today is going to help them push them over that curve for passing. So and thank you to the participants for taking the time and asking questions and linking in. You all did a great job. So thank you so much.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close out if you guys are okay with that.
Okay.
All right, y'all have a wonderful weekend.